A long-awaited CSIRO study says the proposed Murray-Darling Basin Plan would reap between $3 to $8 billion worth of environmental benefits, but it admits the plan won't fix all the basin's problems. It says the water recovery on offer is unlikely to help the higher parts of the Murray floodplains, and some River Red Gum and Black Box communities will continue to suffer. The report comes as the Basin Authority's 20-week consultation period draws to a close. Peter McCutcheon reports.
The process to set up a Murray-Darling Basin Plan was hatched at the height of a record-breaking drought. It is drawing to a conclusion as the river system is full to overflowing. Farmers throughout the basin may now be complaining about too much water, but the CSIRO has found that over time the river system will benefit from additional flows.
There are some real benefits. Things like red gum forests will definitely be in much better condition. The lower lakes will be in better condition. There'll be less risk of acidification of the lower lakes. The Coorong will be in better condition. The Murray Mouth will be open in more times. Water quality will be in better condition. Less algal blooms. There are definite benefits to the Basin Plan.
Dr Ian Prosser is the Science Director for the CSIRO's Water for a Healthy Country flagship. He and his team were asked by the Basin Authority to put a monetary value on returning 2,800 gigalitres a year to the Murray-Darling system, as envisaged under the draft plan.
We estimate between $3 and $8 billion, largely coming from around the Murray and the lower lakes and the Coorong, particularly around amenity values, carbon sequestration values, tourism, those sorts of things.
It's a catchy headline, but the National Irrigators Council doesn't believe it stands up to scrutiny.
This methodology that they've used is not very robust. Really, this report would not hold up in the real world. And given that it's costing us $10 billion to make a return of $3 billion, plus potentially a number of towns and communities have been identified in previous economic reports released by the MDBA as being at risk and perhaps being economically cruelled, it doesn't seem a particularly high figure.
More specifically, the report finds people living in the basin will benefit from a healthier environment. Water quality will improve and tourism will increase.
Having water, better quality water, which means you don't need to have the same water treatment costs. So they're real, cost savings, real savings to the economy.
Under the 2,800 gigalitre a year scenario, algal blooms will become less frequent, vegetated floodplains and wetlands will improve, particularly in the southern basin. But the forest communities in the higher floodplains of the Murray are likely to remain vulnerable.
Some of the environmental objectives, the very higher floodplains, the drier woodland parts of the floodplain, they are harder to supply water to. There it's not so much the amount of water that's being provided to the environment, but the constraints in the system.
And that's something environment groups are likely to focus on in their push for more water to be returned to the environment.
What's clear is that there's not actually enough water there to keep our Ramsar wetlands healthy. There's not actually enough water to give an ironclad guarantee that the lower lakes won't acidify. It certainly improves the chances of those ecosystem services being delivered, but the CSIRO are quite clear in showing that 2,800 gigalitres only gets us part of the way there.
The CSIRO was not asked to look at other scenarios, returning considerably more water than the Basin Authority is proposing. But it's this information environmentalists would like to see.
Certainly incremental numbers above 2,800 seem to be what's called for. As another part of CSIRO, the Goyder Institute, came out and found earlier this week, the 2,800 gigalitre scenario is not sufficient to maintain the South Australian floodplain.
Irrigators, however, question the value of the whole exercise.
We'll first promised this report back in October last year, and I can see why it has been delayed for 6 months and it's been released just 2 weeks before the consultation period is over. Basically, the authors themselves have admitted that the methodology and actually coming up with a figure for cost benefit for the environment is next to impossible.
Peter McCutcheon with that report.